Tonight, we're going to talk about a couple things. It just seems that the Dems are being Dems. They have to have someone to fight with. When they're not fighting with the Republicans or Trump publicans, uh, Despicable Donnie and his delusional disciples, then they fight with each other, and rather badly, I might add. So, tonight we're going to talk about a little bit of COVID. We're going to talk about leadership and the lack thereof. And I'm going to touch on a little bit of the racism as it pertains to some current events. Tonight's show is called It's Time to Be Presidential. So, title speaks for itself. I'm Hank Batiste. This is called Omit the Logic. This shit makes no sense. Let's do this. This shit makes no sense. A few weeks ago, I started grading Biden and the Democrats based on how they were performing, how they were leading, and effectively communicating. But more importantly, I've been trying not to grade them yet on how they've been legislating or getting a legislative agenda through the House and the Senate. Because I understand it's a convoluted process. But in the midst of this congressional stalemate, which I call a clusterfuck, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something like COVID. If I didn't on some things like racism and policing. And sometimes when we see this lax policing as a result of racism, when the perp is white, a lot of times it leads to unnecessary loss of life. I know this sounds harsh, people. I know it sounds harsh. And if you know, I care deeply about people. And that's one of the things that tends to be my downfall. Sometimes I can't let go of people that I feel need a lifeline, even when I know it's not good for me. So there has been times when I've sacrificed myself, I've sacrificed my job, I've sacrificed my relationships for something that I thought needed more of my attention, more so than it was given to me. So I know this sounds harsh, but I'm absolutely tired of hearing about Gabby. Not for the reasons you think. This story, the story of Gabby, this white girl who went on this cross-country trip with her so-called fiance and disappeared. It's a perfect illustration to follow up what we were talking about last week. I talked about different types of racism, but one of the things I left out, because it's a showing of itself, was racism and policing. I've been touching on the fact that the George Floyd bill is dead in the congressional stalemate waters. But I haven't talked about some of the leading factors and the glaring inconsistencies on how law enforcement act when the perpetrator or the suspect or the alleged perpetrator is white. If this boy, and I know his name, but I'm not going to give him oxygen. If you know something about me, you know that I don't give oxygen to some of these people behaving badly on my show. So I'm going to refer to him as he and him. If he were black, he would have been arrested in Utah, in Colorado, in Wyoming, and all places in between. They had at least 4 opportunities to intervene and arrest this young man. If he had been arrested, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. And instead of talking about Gabby and how she was killed and so forth and so on, she would still be here. If he were black and he refused to cooperate, he would have been arrested for obstruction of justice, or obstructing a police investigation, or something to that effect. If he were black, his family would be arrested and threatened with prosecution and charged with obstructing justice for aiding and abetting a suspect from prosecution or some Trump, I won't say that word, some made up charge. I don't like his word to cross my mouth either. Truth be told, I think the boy is in some country with a no extradition policy with America. I'm convinced that one thing for sure, his ass is not in the swamps here in Florida. So we've wasted all of this manpower on a white guy who they've been respectful of and trying not to call a murderer and saying he's going to be arrested for using her card, her debit card, after she came up missing. Now we found out he went out and bought another phone when his phone was confiscated by the police. Did he buy that with Gabby's card as well? That's all I got to say about that. I'm moving on. This shit makes no sense. This shit makes no sense. This shit is COVID. The COVID numbers are dropping momentarily, but we all know one of the things that reminded me is the weather is starting to change here in Florida. Now, a week ago, Florida temperature, there wasn't a number. It just said slavery. It was just that hot here. So we know as it starts to cool off, we know some things are going to happen. And I know that things are on the horizon because suddenly little repugnant Ron, Florida governor, has stopped showboating and posturing for the camera. Why, you ask? Because we all know that COVID is a virus. And just like the flu, COVID is about to mutate and we'll see another spike in the numbers. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. This next, I call it a hibernation because it will be self-imposed. Nobody tells a bear to hibernate. It does so for its own good. So as these numbers start to climb, as this Delta mutations start to mutate and change, and we get the next variant, be it mu or otherwise, take it upon yourself and hibernate. Make it a self-imposed hibernation and protect yourself for these cold winter months because it's about to go buck wild. I hope and wish and pray that I'm wrong. But viruses do what viruses do. And like Forrest Gump says, stupid is as stupid does. I had originally planned on sharing some stats with you. But you know, and I know epidemiology and all of these stats, they're boring as hell. So I'm not going to share them. I'm going to skip them tonight. But I'm going to post some graphs, some maps, and these stats on my page tomorrow. So look for them. I think it's interesting and it's easier to understand when you look at it versus just hearing about it. Infection rates are down about 12 to 20%. The death rate is down about 15 to 20%, but we're still hovering around 1,900 to 2,000 people dying a day. That's almost like every day a plane flying into the Twin Towers in New York. So imagine that. Imagine how traumatic, mentally traumatic that was. And that's the best way to put this into context. Every day, there are nearly 2,000 people that just vanish, never to be seen again. So, suffice it to say, even though these new infection rates and deaths have momentarily dropped, it's a moot point. By year's end, we're going to see another variant, another mutation, and another spike. By year's end, we're going to see 700,000 people who have died from the COVID virus. And many of those people did not have to die, could have been prevented. That's all I got to say about COVID. Moving on. I feel like I need to take a breath and and honor those people, because some of those people chose, and I said that was all I had to say, right? Some of those people died because they chose not to be vaccinated. But some of those people died because they were needlessly infected by some of those other people who chose not to be vaccinated. And for whatever reason, their immune system couldn't fight off this virus. So for them, let's remember them with reverence. Let's lift them up in prayer. Moving on. When I talk about shit makes no sense, it's a phrase that I coined about politics because I call politics polytricks. Poly means many and tricks is self-explanatory. The way the Dems have been behaving is like this big pink elephant in the room. And we've been trying to ignore it. We've been trying not to pay it any attention. First, we saw the other Joe. I call him conniving, mannerless chin. We saw him break from Biden and the Dems to get attention. He initially used coal mining because he's from West Virginia. West Virginia. I was about to say West Virginia. As an excuse for being a holdout. And as soon as mannerless chin did it, then Christian Cinema, and I didn't want to say her name, but I have to so that you understand who it is that I'm talking about. Cinema is this little young girl. She's young enough to be a lot of our daughters. She was born in 1976. She's been in politics for a long time. And she finally made it to the Senate in 2019. So she's referred to as a freshman senator. And this freshman senator, following Manchin's lead, decided to become a holdout too. Now, what makes both of these so-called Dems similar is they both have corporations that are propping them up and financing their campaigns. What makes no sense, and I think it'd be safe to deduce, not assume, deduce, that it's been Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical companies, who has propped cinema up from the state legislature to the House of Representatives and ultimately to the Senate so that they would have an ally. And now it's coming to fruition. But what makes them similar is these campaigns are being financed by these mega corporations. Well, Manchin is the coal mining industry. With cinema, it's what's called Big Pharma, the pharmaceutical companies. Now, what makes no sense, and both of them have in common, is both the residents of West Virginia and Arizona, where cinema is from, support Biden's infrastructure and build back better vision for America. So you've been using this excuse that you're somehow representing these people who say, no, 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 no. That's not how I want you to represent me. And you're saying, but I know what's better for you. And you're holding out. So the people of West Virginia and the people of Arizona are not getting what's due them because of these two people. Now, we talked about a little accountability a while ago. When I started to investigate Manchin, I found out that the coal industry doesn't like Biden's clean energy plan. See, it's going to get into their pockets. On one hand, the EPA means they're going to have to clean up the industry. And on the other hand, as we move from coal to things like wind and electricity and what have you, it's going to cut into their bottom line. Of course, the corporate bigwigs don't like that. When I researched cinema, I was appalled to find out just how much the pharmaceutical industry is contributing to her reelection campaign. Now, what's interesting about Sinema is a freshman senator who was elected in 2019. So she just went to Congress in 2020. Unlike representatives, senators serve for 6 years. So in the midst of all of this important legislation, the infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better and trying to get the country on track and make those, and the thing about this legislation is they keep talking about the price tag. But understand, people like you and me are not paying for this. This is Biden's vision of making the richest 1 to 3% pay their fair share of taxes. This is his way of tapping into the tax breaks, the 2 tax breaks they got while Trump was in office. Delusional Donnie. Where was their outrage when they were signing off for this? Because one of those tax breaks happened when there was a Democratic Congress. And it passed just as easily as it did when it was a Republican Congress. In the midst of this important legislation, I found that Sinema is campaigning for re-election. This is how I found out about the connection between her and the pharmaceutical companies. So I guess there's no such thing as a conflict of interest in politics or politics. Christian Sinema's term does not end until 2025. Why in the Helena of Troy is she out there campaigning now? She's trying to sell the people of Arizona on her bullshit being backed by pharma and convince them that it's good for them. I equate that with some of these despicable disciples getting the vaccine and then going and tell their constituency, you need not be vaccinated because I have your best interest in hand. Oh, by the way, I've been vaccinated, but that's just because, well, don't worry about that. Do as I say, not as I do. So again, there's these glaring inconsistencies. When asked by reporters repeatedly, Senator Sinema, where are you on the Build Back Better plan? Sinema had the audacity to say, I'm right here. She stepped in the elevator. She said, I'm right here in the elevator. Closed the door and she left. So now you're funny? What's your name? Lucille Ball or Roseanne Barr? Accountability is the people of Arizona have to wake up and they have to say, you're doing something other than what we elected you to do. Therefore, enjoy this term because you won't have another. That's all I got to say about that. Manchin, on the other hand, Manchin has been referred to as the despicable Donnie of West Virginia because he's been in the game so long that he feels like he's untouchable. This shit makes no sense. Let's talk about Pelosi. Let's talk about Schumer. And let's talk about Biden. Pelosi has been holding daily press conferences saying that she will take the infrastructure bill to the floor and we will get it passed and la da 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 da. She's been smiling for the camera. The problem is the progressives, the so-called progressives, have come there on the same floor in front of the same cameras and say, we will not settle for anything less than $3 trillion. Problem is, Pelosi took the original Build Back Better plan that included the infrastructure bill and she separated them out so that there would be two bills. Because somewhere between her and Biden, I don't know if Biden convinced her or the other way around, somebody thought that they had a bill that they could get bipartisan support on. So they separated the two bills and they came out with the framework for the infrastructure bill. Then Manchin didn't want to support this. But once the Republicans got on board, the Trump publicans got on board, he had no choice. So he supported the bill. So it passed through the Senate. When it went to the House, the so-called progressives said that they would not even take the bill up to the floor to vote on it unless the two bills were reunited and that the Build Back Better plan was included in the bill. And this started this whole, I know this is overboard, but I want you to understand what's happening. They keep saying that they're fighting for Americans. I'm tired of Congress always using this line. When they decide to filibuster, when they decide to hold out, when they decide to do what they do, you see, they're getting paid. It doesn't affect them. They have stellar health care. It doesn't affect them. Seniors can't afford to go to the doctor. Working people can't afford to go to the doctor, have a dental plan, have their eyes checked, and so forth and so on. But the congressional knuckleheads have no problem in doing all of the above. But yet they're trying to convince you and me that they're fighting for you and I. Schumer, just like Pelosi, has been smiling for the camera and trying to show us that he has control over the Dems in the Senate. Meanwhile, Manless Chin and his newest protege, Christie, no love, has been basking in the limelight because they've been getting all this attention. Meanwhile, they're filling their reelection chests with all of this money from these corporations that are profiting from these bills not being passed and made law. Meanwhile, Biden, on the other hand, and that's right, I said Biden. I didn't say President Biden. I said Biden is behaving like the 51st senator and trying to play nice. He's trying to negotiate like he was still in the Senate. He's banking that on at some point his Senate style of negotiating and maneuvering is going to win Manchin and Sinema over. He feels like if he wins Manchin over, then Sinema will follow. Bullshit. Fuck out of here. It's time for the leaders to lead. Mr. President, it's time you put your foot down on the necks if necessary and say, I am the president of the United States, these United States. 8 million Americans elected me. This was the vision that I gave to them on the campaign road, and I intend to keep this promise. If you cannot get this bill passed, I will come to your district. I will campaign against you, and I will find someone, I will get someone elected that will work with me for America. Because if more than 8 to 10 million people are on board, now it's up to about 2/3 of America believes in this because they see how it profit them. So why are you holding out? Let me say it again. It's time for Joe Biden to say, I am the president of the United States, these United States. 8 million Americans elected me. I'm the face of the Democratic Party. If you cannot work with me and get this bill passed, I will come to your district. I will campaign against you, and we will get someone elected who will get with the program and do what's best for the American people. I will not allow you to cause me my presidency and the Democrats, the House and the Senate. Because when they lose the House and the Senate in 2022, for the last 2 years of his presidency, Joe Biden will be a lame duck president who won't be able to get a hall pass. Mr. President, it's time to stop acting like a senator. Mr. President, it's time to be presidential. That's all I got for you tonight. I need not give Pelosi, I need not give Schumer, the Dems, or the president a grade. You know what I feel. You probably feel the same way. You're tired of hearing why these people have been dealing with this nonsense since January and have not been able to get anything done. This is what accountability looks like, folks. Let's hold them accountable. When you see something, say something. That's all I got for you tonight. As always, I want to remind you, go to my YouTube, subscribe, and give me a thumbs up. If you have already subscribed, share my podcast. Share with a friend or family member. The reason I started doing this is so that we can get everybody energized and engaged. Ask them to subscribe and give me a thumbs up and some positive words. Let's get this going. I'll see you next week, folks, right here. Same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. My name is Hank Batiste, aka Rennie, aka the Renaissance Man. OMITdaLOGIC. This shit makes no sense, but I got something to say about it. As always, important, I wish you love, I wish you peace. And even though I got a haircut, hair grease. I'm out of here, folks.